question for you. What happens when one small-time indie filmmaker walks into a bar and meets with another small-time indie filmmaker to discuss their local films, the film scene, and how to make movies in Tampa, Florida? You get the Film Bar Review. Today we discuss Sanctuary and 15 Minutes of Faye.
How you doing, bro?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast. This is exciting.
You're welcome, man. We're at Wheat's place. So it's a little different for us.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming down here. I would have made it up to you eventually, but who knows
no problem,
when.
bro.
So thanks a lot.
It's exciting, actually. It's too bad that Tim couldn't come. So it's also going to be different in the sense that my bro Tim can't be here, and he's always like game for this kind of conversation. And
Cool.
So, but I wanted to talk to you about your films, and wanted to talk to you about, like, you know, shooting films locally, how easy it is, how difficult it is, and of course your future, what you're planning for the future. I guess since I just saw Sanctuary, we could talk about that first. It's the more recent film.
Cool. We actually shot Sanctuary first, and then went through a bunch of stuff.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Believe it or not.
That was that. So 10 years ago?
Yeah, both of them were shot about 10 years ago. It's pretty wild, right?
Wild. See,
Absolutely.
This is why I knew I had to talk to you.
It takes
like,
so long when you're...
How does this happen?
Yeah. Both movies had really kind of unique problems in production and post-production that make for fun stories. There's a lot of cautionary tales in both films.
There must be.
And stuff that went wrong, so...
And you know what? Don't feel bad, because there are people who would give me a hard time. It took me 4 years to finish a short.
Cool.
So don't feel bad. It's a silly short called Golden Foot. It's on YouTube.
Cool.
And I don't think anybody has seen it.
Cool.
My mom probably was all the views.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been there.
Maybe the lead actor, maybe one of the producers. And that's it. Like,
that's how it goes.
And actually, Wheat helped me with my first short, Death Do Us Part, and this was like, what, 2012 maybe? Something like that?
Cool.
Before that.
2011 maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
It had to have been before that.
That's amazing, isn't it? 10 years. And you shot it?
Well, it was Matt Whiteman.
Matt, yeah, he was with Clowns Demented. But when we did Death Do Us Part, that was my film, remember?
Oh, right.
And you were the cinematographer, and I had little issues with the lighting, remember? But it went well. It was just a few days shooting, and some half days and stuff. So these things take a long time. Like we mentioned before, I'm a quality person. You're a quality person.
Totally.
So you would
Quality
rather
over quantity.
wait and make it right.
Totally.
Because when you see a film that's not that great, people write it off.
Although you have to be wise too, and not get yourself in over your head. And there's like this bias we have where when we've spent so much time and money and energy on a project, you just want to keep going. And like sometimes it is healthy to just stop and not complete that project, or take a break and then complete it later. But
get a breather or something. Get some distance.
Yeah.
It's like post sometimes. You have to take a breather.
Totally.
Post. So tell me then about Sanctuary, since I just saw it. You shot this. You said you shot this before 15 Minutes of Faye.
2010, believe it or not.
It doesn't look that old.
It doesn't. Yeah, I think it holds up pretty well. Well, we shot part of it in 2010. I'll get to the story of what happened a little later, but probably about 3/4 of the movie was shot in 2010, and then 1/4 of the movie was shot in 2014. So.
Okay. Which parts did you have to save till later?
Just miscellaneous parts throughout the movie.
Filling in spaces?
Yeah, we were not happy with the way the movie turned out once we had originally shot it.
What was it specifically?
It was a bunch of stuff. The set was chaotic because we were young then. We were fresh out of film school. We were inexperienced. We were, let's make a movie. We have access to this awesome location.
So which film school? Ringling or like
UCF in Orlando.
That's Tim Mannix. He went to UCF.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome. When did he graduate?
He actually didn't graduate.
Oh, interesting.
He was one of those. He was kind of
Cool.
like, this is good, but I think I want to move on. And he was actually going
Gotcha.
to go to an art school, and he didn't do that either. So he just got a job, and now he's been making films on the side every now and then.
Cool. You really don't have to go to film school if you want to get into film. I mean, you could major in anything you want or nothing at all. You just, meet the right people, work on their projects. Everyone wants people to work on their projects, and once you meet people, that's your way in.
Yeah, I think a lot of people confuse the academics of school for like an art school.
Yeah.
Art school is less about academics; it's more about doing things, accomplishing things. And so, if you think of film as an art kind of industry, then this also explains why you can work for free and probably should. Because when you're in art, you have to kind of get more experience. Like I said, it's about doing things. So you're actually getting a benefit by being allowed to get experience. And they'll tell you this in Hollywood every day, if you're there to listen to them. Bloviate about it, how important this PA job is, or something.
And then they exploit workers and never pay them, and that's unions, and that's a whole other story.
And then there's the credits and all that stuff, which you might be lucky to see one day. But like, at least in Florida, it's like you can get experience, you can get credits, you can do a lot and never see a bit of money. But that's okay because you're getting experience and knowledge, and you're learning how to make better films.
And then you'll move somewhere besides Florida.
You will move somewhere else, because you'll realize that the reason you're not being paid isn't because they don't have any money either.
Right.
That's why. So it is funny, but it's kind of how it works. And at least one thing you can do here is kind of under the radar here, kind of try to make good stuff, which I feel like you did here.
Cool, thank you.
That's exactly, to me, what you did.
We tried.
Under the radar, you made some stuff that generally doesn't come out of here. As it comes to some quality, you have some quality cinematography, you have some quality acting,
Thanks.
some good writing, just kind of like all around solid work.
Thanks.
I'm sure that you're probably like, as I probably would if someone complimented me, you're probably like, yeah, but you didn't see all this. You're probably not seeing all the junk I see.
Totally.
But yeah, so you said you had issues with the set, or what was
Yeah,
it?
we were just young and inexperienced and didn't really know what we were doing. And if anyone who worked on that set is listening to this podcast, I sincerely apologize to you for putting you through that. Yes. It was not a fun set to work on. My close friend, Reed Nice Wonder, is the director of Sanctuary. I wrote it and he directed it. And
Did you kind of co-direct it a little bit, or?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. And he definitely did a little bit of co-directing on 15 Minutes of Fate too. We're close like that. And
That's
then
awesome.
my other close friend, Addison Bryan, produced both films. Or no, he's Addison Kavanagh now. Sorry, he changed his name.
Oh wow. Edison Kavanaugh?
Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
So we went into Sanctuary because all we'd done before Sanctuary was shorts. It was our first feature, and so we didn't really have the stamina or just the leadership skills to lead people through that. So essentially we just called up a bunch of people in our film school who we thought would be good working on the movie, and we're like, hey, you want to work on a movie this summer? And somehow we talked all these people into working on the movie and got this fairly large crew. I mean, large,
decent. Yeah.
yeah, large for like a very low budget movie like Sanctuary was. It probably looks higher budget than it was. We cheated so much to get
But you can do
better
that today.
production.
Like I wish I
values.
saw more of that. Really, because we have the ability. It just goes to show that it does take talent. And even though you might have all this equipment or whatever, it's like it really is how you use it. And so at least you had solid cinematography from your
Totally.
people there.
Yeah, his name is Marco Cordero. He's amazing.
He's still doing cinematography.
I think so. I've kind of lost touch with him, but he was like the star cinematographer at our film
Sweet.
school. So
Marco Cordero?
Marco Cordero. Yeah,
Marco
he's
Cordero.
excellent. He did a
Sweet.
great job on Sanctuary. Yeah, gosh, so many things went wrong on that set. I'm trying to. we ran crazy hours for one. There was one day that was insane. It was like an 18-hour work day. It was just, nobody
I've been there.
in their right mind does that unless you're 21 and you're an idiot.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I did a 24-hour day once.
oh god.
And we were shooting in Orlando, and half of us were back in St. Pete, living in St. Pete. So it's like, well, what do we do? So basically what I did is I set it up to where I had PAs there, or people who were not like directly working all the time, and I would say, you guys are going to be driving. The people who are working are not driving. You need to pool up with these people
Right.
so that they're driving you home. Because I think that it was recently before that too, that there was somebody who's driving from a set, and they had worked a big long day and they'd like died, like had gotten in a car accident and died.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so this was like fresh in our minds.
Yeah, it's not good to put people through that.
I
Like
know.
as
Like,
leaders,
what was I
we
thinking?
definitely, we need to.
I mean, I was being cautious. I that was what I was thinking actually, was how can I do this? And if instead of writing it off though, I was like, is there a way to make this safe? Is there a way to make this where no matter who it was, whether it was a veteran film guy or someone's mother, if they would look at this plan and go, okay, I can see this plan working. That's what I was okay with. But anything less than that, I was not going to do it. But we did make a plan that worked, and we had rotating people and stuff like this. So I was surprised. So it can be done.
It's an interesting approach.
Yeah. So you had rough days.
Yeah, people were just, and I think it was a lot of the crew's first feature film too, and the cast was under a lot of pressure. There were cast members and crew members, not many, but there were a few who just had like nervous breakdowns and needed to leave the set.
Wow.
And so then we lost a person who performed a vital function on the crew or on the cast, and we had to figure out, okay, how do we make do without this person for the remainder of the shoot, because we shot Sanctuary in Naples, Florida, so that was shot down there, and Naples has even less of a film community than there is here, and so it was not easy to just call somebody, oh, I know a guy who lives here, and to replace the missing person. No, the missing person was just gone.
That was it.
So we had to figure out how to make do. It was just a rough time. We rushed through. We didn't even get all the movie shot. We had to abandon it. We had to abandon the last like 4 or 5 shoot days because various factors. We were just down too many people, and we couldn't get access to some locations. We were lucky to get access to the locations that we did. There were some really cool locations.
It was
in that
mostly
movie.
that one location though.
Yeah,
luckily.
mostly the
You
condo.
had the courtyard area, the drive, the garage area.
Yeah.
A random street somewhere. But mostly inside that condo, that very pristine,
Yeah.
It did look unlived in though, which is
Gotcha.
a common film thing.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
looks
that's
very
true.
unlived in. And I find that it's hard, even for the best of production designers, to make things look lived in.
Right.
It takes real talent. You know?
We definitely had a few really talented people on that set who kind of held everything together. I would say one of them is Fedor Steer. He's the actor who plays Virgil.
Nice.
He's an incredible guy. He's just
He
so
had some fire.
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
He's so nice and so professional. I love him, and he's actually gone on to be in like real movies, real big movies now.
Real movies. Listen to you.
Yeah, well, The Haunting of Hill House. Have you seen The Haunting of Hill House? He's William Hill. He's the big tall ghost guy going through the house, and
He's got that look to him, doesn't he?
yeah, he's so good. He's got a unique look. He plays villains really well, but he is just the nicest, sweetest guy, most
so
professional guy you'd ever want to work with. But I think he really handled himself well on that set and kind of held the cast together. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
good.
kind of a different premise too. I mean, I don't see, you see a lot of films that kind of try to accomplish this kind of story, and they often fail. I think yours it has kind of a Lost vibe to it in a way, where it's like
Cool. Oh, I take that as such a
Yeah.
compliment. I
good.
love Lost.
Well, back in the day when you were shooting it, you were probably
Probably
were you thinking
channeling
of it?
Lost.
A little
Yeah.
bit of, yeah. And I know a lot, it hasn't aged well in a way because people always talk about the ending.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got real kind of mystery and charm to it.
Yeah.
So I think that your film does that. And I like just the idea of it being before, a little bit of spoilers here, but before they're born.
Mm-hmm.
This is happening in this time in between, and the question is, are you going to be born,
Mm-hmm.
or have you kind of almost like you're earning your birth?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a moral element there.
Mm-hmm. Have you, by any chance, seen Pixar's Soul?
Yeah.
When we saw that, we were like, "Whoa, this is like Sanctuary as like a family comedy." It's just like the same premise, but instead of horror, it's comedy.
So we
Yeah.
made Soul before Disney did.
I know, and we made it as a scary horror movie with demons. So,
Some guy at Disney's like, darn it! They just came out with Sanctuary. That must be fun. That must have been fun to put that together and come up with those new ideas.
yeah, it was really interesting. The first time we shot it, like I said, I don't think we got it right. The original script was just too sappy and trite
Oh, yeah.
and just very, well, everyone has a purpose. It was just like this very kind of
I've written that stuff
cliche.
and
Yeah,
erased it later.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we after we finished shooting the movie. I think Reed and I were very a little traumatized. I think everyone on the set was a little traumatized, unfortunately. But we didn't really like what we'd shot, and as the years went by, and we lived with the footage, because we wanted to distance ourselves from it. So Reed didn't start editing it right away. We just kind of let it sit there for a little while. And then coming back to it, it was like, wow, this has a lot of flaws. This is really not good. The writing's not great. We're missing a whole bunch of scenes. What are we going to do with this? And
So how much of it did you cut out in order to make it what it is now?
we
lot of
cut
sappy stuff, or-
we cut a few scenes. There were a few scenes that we did shoot that were cut, and a few scenes that never even got shot in the first place that we just decided to replace with something better, and just to add more suspense and add just more mystery and more of a story world. I think one of the flaws of the original version was that it was too vague. We never really explained what was happening, and we still
like that.
don't fully explain what's
I like
happening.
that.
But yeah, I like the mystery, and I like the mystery too much to the point where I tend to err on the side of leaving things so vague that they're unclear, and the audience is just like, "What? What did I just
I'd
watch?"
say keep doing that.
Oh God, I
Totally.
don't know. It's a fine line to
Because
walk.
Everybody's so caught up with like science and facts right now. Like, I hate to say it, but it's like it takes all the fun out of everything. You know what I mean? Like everybody's like complaining about like, oh, is this really possible? Could they really do this in the film? I'm like, it's a movie.
Okay, yeah, I get what you're
You
saying.
know what I mean? Like,
True.
Like, okay, I understand if it takes you out of your suspension of disbelief a little bit. You're like, that's ridiculous or whatever. But if you know how to use film language enough to just kind of communicate in film language, and yes, maybe it's a little bit like can't be done, but if you care about the characters and the story is moving you forward, you kind of don't care. If you like the story, like if you're enjoying yourself, you kind of don't care. And that's kind of the point. Like it's like really all of these things are campfire stories. And so you got kids around a campfire story and they just want to be thrilled by something. And as a filmmaker, your job is to just, okay, kids, there's a story about this, and if you go out at night and you're going to get in trouble, you're going to get eaten or something, and this is what people want. And it's like, and obviously I'm not saying science is ridiculous. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is science, it's a double-edged sword. It's like, yes.
In film and in art, yeah.
Yeah, right. For life, it's like the mystery of life gets taken out a little bit. And the mystery of like, can we go to Mars? Or the mystery of what's on the dark side of the moon? Or the mystery of like, I don't know, even today with the pandemic and everything, it's like viruses, like how do they work? And mRNA vaccines, and how does this all work? It takes a little bit of the mystery of of life out of it, you know?
If you look at the ridiculous internet obsession with breaking down every little piece of, for instance, the Star Wars prequels and sequels,
my goodness.
like everything,
So true.
everything that the internet put the prequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy through, you can do that with the originals too. Like if you want to, you can break it down and say this flaw's here, that flaw's there, and you can just rip it apart. But you're right; it takes some of the mystery out of it.
They're walking around with like a big dog.
Magic.
You know, like, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's what the actors on that set were probably thinking. You know, Harrison Ford and people. I'm making fun of George Lucas.
Yeah.
But it's like, also, it's about building your kind of the likeness or the humanity in your characters. And we just like Luke Skywalker so much that we do not care if a lightsaber cannot work. You know what I mean? Like, we just don't care because we want to see if he's going to survive this story and dealing with his father and all this stuff. So that's what I think we need again. We need more of that. And I like what you did. Like, I like the fact that this was a mysterious tale, and half of it, it's like, what's happening? There is a portion in the middle where there's enough of that, what's happening, where you're kind of like, ugh. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, there's a trope where Virgil is not telling them anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
he knows things, obviously, he's trying to save them, but is he trying to save them? And the girl, and especially Cole, the blind dude, where it's like, I'm sorry, I would lose my patience at this point and be like, I do not care who you are and if you have a security badge on. I do not care. Like, I can't trust you until you tell me some stuff.
Right.
You know, you're going to be in the other room and I'm going to lock the door.
There's that suspension of disbelief. Like, would someone really withhold this vital of information for this long? It's like in Lost. Like, if Jacob had just come to them at the very beginning of the series and said, hey, this is what I need from you guys, you could have lost 5.5 seasons of the show, and it would have all been over. You know, it's like, would this information really be withheld in real life? But, you know, you got to do it for the drama.
But in their case, right, in the show's case, well, then we wouldn't have 5 extra seasons.
Yeah, exactly.
And in your case, it's like, well, then we actually, in your case, it makes more sense because in your case, it's like, does Virgil even know? Does Virgil even understand? Because it almost seems like these spirit beings, they're in on it in a way, but in a way, they're also in a hierarchy of authority that's telling them that they have to do these things, just based on some authoritarian, like mandate placed on them. So it's like,
interesting.
In a way, Virgil doesn't even know. And that's what makes the ending work too. Because in the very end, what's his name also becomes like Virgil.
Right.
And that's because it's like he's seen the light. After this thing happens to Virgil, it's like, wait a second, it's not just us doing these dirty deeds against human beings. They're doing it against us too.
Right.
So it's like, maybe it does make more sense to rebel from this, hierarchical mandate from on high. So I like how that was put together. In a way, if you were in Virgil's place, could you really explain it when they're asking you? Like, no, you need to tell me what's going on. Well, this is what I know. I know this, which makes no sense, and I know that, which makes no sense. And I was under the water and seeing a being under there, and then my heart changed, and now I'm seeing that you guys are in danger, and it just sounds really hokey, no matter how you slice it. So, I mean, he could have said something to make it like, to explain it, especially for the girl, because she's got a baby in the womb, and all this stuff. It's like she has a lot to protect here. But I still enjoyed it because it was still moving you forward. There was a little bit of, I guess, to get into some of the other things that might have been not mistakes, but kind of like imperfections, which I'm sure you probably thought about for 10 years. Some of the blood, some of the effects were not great.
Right.
But I've seen much worse. Bro.
Right,
I've
right,
seen much
yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
So I don't really think you have a lot to be that concerned about. But it was noticeable.
Right,
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you can see it. And obviously, you weren't going to be able to be shooting real guns in that room,
Right.
etc. You know, so that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the window, when it shattered, it was good, but you could tell it was not.
Right, right.
Yeah, it was just enough to where it's like, this is not random enough.
Right.
You know, because there's that certain random generator.
I wasn't involved in the effects at all. I don't know how that whole process played out.
It looked
we would
pretty
have
good,
to ask
pretty
Reed.
decent. But yeah, at a certain point, you were like, yeah, that wasn't real. You know, and also the sound. The sound was. This happens a lot locally. Is you just get terrible sound.
I know it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, and which frustrates me because it's like this is number one, like on your
I
list.
know it's
bro.
so important.
You know.
Everyone underestimates the sound. Yeah.
Yeah, I think your sound was good. There was a few sound effects that didn't play well, like when Virgil hears something in the other room and it's just like a whumping sound. Whoomp. It didn't really play. Like I was like, that doesn't sound dangerous enough to go see what it is. And what else was it? Kind of like room tone when you're in between, not when you're in between rooms, but kind of like when there's a pause in between dialogue. Sometimes you'll hear a little bit of a sound, or well, not a sound so much as not a sound. You know what I mean? Like, so those things show up every now. You know, that was maybe 2 of those in the whole film.
Cool.
See, I mean, I'm very detail oriented. So like, this is why it took me 4 years to make my short. But it, you know, like you, I think that's a good thing. I think, you know, Hollywood just has people and money to throw at things, so they can just be like, okay, instead of solving this, taking a month to solve this, you're going to solve it in 3 days,
Right.
with $3,000 or $15,000. Just
Right.
bam, there you go. And then they hire 3 people, and they're that's how
Right.
it gets done. So, but yeah, I was impressed, man.
Cool.
And I'm wondering too, because these are impressive films. We can talk about 15 Minutes of Faye as well. Jamie Parslow?
Yeah.
Yeah, I met him on Experiment 7.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he moved to, was it LA or North California? I don't know. He moved to California.
Yeah, he's in California now.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great.
He did a good job.
Do you want to hear the rest of the story of Sanctuary?
Absolutely.
Okay, but
Yeah.
I just don't know. Do you want to split it up and do Sanctuary and then Faye, or do you want to
Yeah.
kind of go back and forth?
Yeah, we can split it up.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We so 2014 Reed's well, I guess I should say I was so displeased with the way that the movie had turned out that
Yeah.
I decided to write a book. I was like, I want to tell this story the way it was meant to be told, and
I love it.
in my heart. And so I went and I wrote a novelization of it and self-published it.
Of Sanctuary.
And, yeah.
Awesome.
And Reed noticed that I was doing this, and I'm not quite sure how it happened. I heard that he wanted to reshoot some stuff, and then we kind of discussed together, and he asked me to rewrite parts of the script from the book. So I did that, and we were able to, fortunately, all the actors agreed to come back. It's amazing.
So that's
after
how
that,
you got everyone
that
to come
experience.
back.
Yeah.
You made a novelization, and they liked it. and they
I don't think
agreed.
any of the actors
Well, they
read it.
didn't
Well,
know, but-
actually, Fedor read it. Fedor did read it.
That's awesome.
But yeah, and then everybody came back.
But Reed, at least, he was like so impressed with it that he was like, "We have to add these scenes to it."
I don't know if Reed read. He read parts of it that I think I pitched a couple scenes to him, like, hey, we could change this into this and this into this. What do you think? And he's like, yes, we should do it.
Brilliant.
And
yeah.
so we got
Yeah.
everybody back, and we'd grown creatively by 4 years at that point. So we went back into it with new eyes, and we were able to add some scenes. That whole scene in the car where they leave the condo and he's
Yeah.
yelling at her and kind of explaining things as they drive. That was added in 2014. the scene where they're arguing with each other in the closet, the scene where, spoiler alert, where they're underwater and then they break up at the end of the club.
Yeah.
And that's their big choice that they made, and then they disappear. That was added in 2014. So like a lot of key scenes that explain everything were added
Underwater
in 2014.
stuff, man.
The underwater
that
stuff.
Was daring.
It was, yeah.
Like, who does that?
I know. We were crazy to do that. We did some underwater reshoots too. Yeah.
How many lights did you have?
Like
every
lot.
light?
Yeah, there were like 8 lights around the pool. We draped like, I don't know, some kind of black tarp around the edges of the pool so it looked like this black
that did
abyss.
Work. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that was good.
Cool. Yeah.
I mean, it worked. It did. I mean, I would have expected it to be more amateurish when I saw it. It's like, oh, they're going to do underwater stuff now.
Right.
It's going to be like Top Secret. Remember Top Secret? It's so great, you know?
We must have spent probably 8 or 9 shoot days. Probably almost a fourth of all shoot days of the entire film were spent underwater, shooting those water scenes. It was just so time-consuming.
Getting ready, taking breaks. Wow. That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, continue.
And Reed just has this incredible perseverance that he, after 2014, I wasn't really involved with it anymore, and Reed just took it and ran with it. We had I think it was officially finished in 2018. We had a showing down in Naples of the movie. I think he's made a few tweaks to it since then, but it's just coming online now on Amazon Prime and stuff. So
is he from down there? Or?
Reed is from Virginia originally, and then he has family in Naples. So we were able to go down there and get some locations, and very grateful to them to Reed's family for providing us some interesting locations.
Yeah, I mean, expensive condo.
Yeah, and Reed went to school with us in Orlando at UCF. That's where we met. So, and he's in LA now too.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Does he ever come back, or does he?
He does. Yeah.
Work out there in film, or?
He does a lot of miscellaneous stuff. I think he works with a lot of podcasters actually, and helping people record stuff on their podcasts. So
cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
And miscellaneous stuff.
Right down my alley.
Yeah, exactly. Reed's amazing. I love Reed. He's one of my best friends.
Yeah, I'd love to meet him.
Cool.
What other film has he done, by the way, besides Sanctuary?
We did movies for Campus Movie Fest. If you YouTube them, you can find our old Campus Movie Fest stuff. I don't think he's done anything big like this though. Sanctuary is his first movie. Yeah. I keep trying to get him to make another movie, but I don't know if he wants to.
We're gonna have to do that to you too. Like.
Yeah. Oh God. I don't know if I want to make another one.
It's like your guy's flame burned out too quick.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Like, I'm not interested in making a movie myself anymore. I don't know if Reed is or not. He's clearly talented because, Sanctuary started as a dumpster fire and then he built it into something that's pretty good, you know, so.
It really is.
I hope he makes another movie.
So, before we get into 15 Minutes of Fate, it does kind of make me curious because, having started this podcast in January and looking for local films that, I think are worth talking about around here, they're hard to find. They really are. It's hard to find good stuff that that reaches a professional quality. And a lot of times it's just kind of halfway there, but a lot of stuff is just fundamentally flawed. And generally, of course, story is the weakest stuff. It's the most common failure, I think, just because it's hard. It's hard to get good storytelling out there.
And it's like you were saying before we started recording, just the brain drain. Like as soon as someone from this area gets, talented enough to be able to do this at a really professional level, they move away, and then
that's it. It's that they realize they're talented, because a lot of kids know maybe growing up, and then they just stay on the fumes of their parents or people in high school who have supported them. Others, they realize it in college, or that they start practicing it, because often your idea of filmmaking and the actual reality of filmmaking is different.
Mm-hmm.
So you start practicing it, and then you're like, either you fall in love with it or you fall out of love with it at
Mm-hmm.
that point. But it's like, it's hard to find people who can do it and want to do it and have the ability to do it.
Mm-hmm.
All those things. And it seems like you know how to do that.
Oh, thank you.
And you have a good sense of storytelling.
Thank you.
You know, do you feel like it was like you making these films opened up in you the writer inside of you, or do you feel like it was like you found this is the best way for you to control your stories and to make your stories happen?
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, because you know, when you're the, you know, quote unquote auteur, you know, I hate that word. I hate that people think that's a cool thing, because film is collaborative. It's fundamentally collaborative.
Yeah.
You need to approach it like a collaboration, not like you're God.
Right.
And that's how you know, young people in film school kind
But it is a thing.
believe that they are
You
the
know.
auteur, and
Yeah. It's a thing. It's like part of art, you know, being an artist that
Mm-hmm.
either works for you or doesn't work for you. And I don't think of it as an ego thing at all. It's either something you're good at or something like, it's kind of like the technical director or the actor's director or the writer's director. It's like you are a different kind, you know, one director is this way and one is that way.
Mm-hmm.
Some are more collaborative, and I think some are just kind of douchebags. And they also happen to know how to tell a good story.
I've met them
So-
before too.
So they call them auteurs.
Yeah.
But no, there's also some kind, you know, strictly artists. You know, like they're artists in wearing the director's hat.
Right.
But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, when you're wearing all of these hats of writer, director, editor, you have this vision that you care so much about. It's so near and dear to your heart.
Yeah.
And then, you know, because of the constraints of the budget, because of some actor's ego or personality, because some crew member just doesn't care and is lazy, or you know, because of your own ego and the way that you lead and treat people, or just because of the long haul process of post-production wears you down.
Oh, yeah, man.
Your vision, which is originally, you know, in your head, it's this flawless thing. It's this 100% flawless thing.
Yeah.
By the end of editing, you get down to maybe you're at like 60% of
It's
what your
tatters.
original vision was.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't stand that. I
Yeah.
hated that so much. And of course, that's why successful filmmakers keep good people close to the vest.
Yeah.
Like they really stick with those same crew members throughout their entire careers because of
That's
that.
smart.
Because
Yeah.
they know that they can trust those people, and those people know that they can trust them as leaders, as
Yep.
creative leaders.
Very true.
And
Very
so I was just not a fan of I
You hadn't found your tribe yet, too, right?
I found some of my tribe. It's
great.
just that, you know, you need to work for a while in the business before you can find a tribe that'll let you keep, you know, even 80% of your original
Yeah.
vision intact. And I was just like,
Or
do
even
I
indulge you on ideas. Like a lot of people just won't even
right
tolerate you know,
right
weird ideas.
Yeah, you know, you want people around you who will keep you humble, who will call you out on your bullshit when you're wrong, or when you're leading everyone on a fool's errand. But you also want people who will trust you and will you know, let you try things
Yeah.
that are a little different and unconventional.
I wonder if there's like an art of negotiation there, where it's like, because I can see some artistic savant, and they've got some total BS idea, and somebody who's been doing it for 40 years is like, no, like this is not. But then it could work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like maybe it's someone like Sam Raimi or something making Evil Dead,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got all these freaking creative ideas that you're like, what the heck? How did he come up with that? You know, like he's. I mean, I don't know if you know much about Evil Dead.
I've seen them, but I last time I saw them, I was like 21, 22. So.
The dude had ideas like instead of like a dolly shot,
Mm-hmm.
putting up, like, you know how you would like cut wood or something on sawhorses,
Mm-hmm.
and put a piece of wood there and like put Vaseline all over it and slide the camera that way, smooth as butter, right?
Oh, that's funny.
Like, who would think of that?
right.
So it's like some of these ideas can work, and sometimes I think you just need people who believe in you.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you're good at selling BS. I don't know, but you know, and some people aren't. But it doesn't mean their ideas are bad. And then I think there's negotiation there where it's like, how do I explain this in a way that isn't going to piss people off? You know, I'm not talking down to somebody, for example. I just want to see if this is going to work. And yes, it's going to take half an hour to an hour to, like, on set to do this, and you might get really frustrated. But it's like, can we try it? And I've always been like as a director, it's like, if a cinematographer or even an actor is like, why don't we try a shot like this? And then the idea is, okay, I see what you're trying to go for. That's good. Is it physically, tangibly possible? Maybe. Is it worth an hour on set?
Mm-hmm.
I have to try to indulge it a little bit to where it's like, maybe I don't believe it's worth the hour, but it's like, let's so there's an art of negotiation there where you're like weighing the pros and cons, and I just say go for it. You know what I mean? Like, if you've got like an idea like that, and the end result could be really great. Like, if you're just kind of getting like an up in the nose shot or something, you know, like, if that's what you're trying to accomplish, it's like, no, because the purpose is not going to help us. The purpose of it isn't going to necessarily create the best result.
Mm-hmm.
So the extra work isn't worth it if you accomplish it.
Mm-hmm.
But if the objective, you know, if the idea, the end goal is like, it could be worth 2 hours
Mm-hmm.
to do this, then I'd say go for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because, you know, this is not a Hollywood set, for example. Like, I don't have like a hard, fast budget in that way. Like, let's be creative. Let's use our time and energy and our creative mind to make something different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, when you're an indie filmmaker making small time films, to me it's like, what you want to do is go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're on the opposite side of the football field, shoot a bomb all the way. Like, go for it. You know what I mean? Maybe you'll get it. So, but if we're always being so risk averse like Hollywood, it's like, we're not going to really impress anybody. You know?
Right, totally.
It's not going to really, you know, so go for crazy ideas, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I mean, I what were we talking about before? Like, how did we get here?
Oh, God. I don't remember.
It's funny, the rabbit trailing.
I know.
It can be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked what you guys were doing, and your friend Reed brought it in a good place, like editing wise, in the last few years. Seems like.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's on Amazon.
It's
Prime.
on Amazon. I know. I can't believe if you'd told me when we were making this that it would be on a big streaming service. I mean, streaming services weren't as big back then, but I've been like, what? No.
Yeah.
So it's a happy ending. I'm glad
it is great.
that Reed was able to finish it.
And Amazon created new rules too, didn't they, recently, where they don't want just anything on their site now.
Oh, I don't know.
They have.
I haven't been paying attention to that at all.
Because for a while, actually, for a few years there, you could put almost anything on Amazon.
Wow.
But what you had to do was get a certain amount of views, and they wouldn't just advertise your film.
Huh.
So it's like you would have to kind of advertise it and get people to watch it and maybe review it. And like the more hits they got on Amazon, the more it would be like, okay, now we're going to, you know, put it into with our regular stuff.
Right.
But you could put it up there and they could watch it.
Cool.
But now I think they said they're going to restrict that, since I think this last year they're going to make it to where they bottleneck it in some way.
Huh.
So it's good that you guys are on there.
Gosh, I've really got to go on there and leave a 5-star review.
I know, right?
I should know this as the author who thrives on 5-star reviews of my books, and I haven't even reviewed the movie.
That's great.
So I need to go on and do that.
I probably should do that too.
Thanks.
I'm probably one of the first few people to see it.
Cool. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I saw it when I first went on there. It was like a UK link or something, and it brought me to, and it was like pounds. And I was like, maybe it's not licensed for the U.S. So then I had to look it up on Amazon.
So they're watching Sanctuary in Britain.
Yes, they are.
That's exciting.
A few pounds. Yes.
Cool.
So, yes, I was going to ask about 15 minutes, but then I also was going to ask about what's keeping you from continuing in film.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
Is it just, like we were saying, the writer in you coming out, the storytelling, the control of your stories, or is it also that you were really disenfranchised with the local film scene, or?
Yeah, both. Yeah, I think I did become disillusioned with film because of the experiences on Sanctuary and Faye, and it's just, most of each of those movies were self-financed, and it's just so expensive.
It is.
It's so it's not a smart way to spend money when you're young, unfortunately. So that's part of it, and then there is the control aspect too, where if I'm writing a novel, I can retain 100% control, for better or worse. You still need collaborators and people who will read your stuff and tell you, hey, these parts aren't good, you need to fix them. You need to stay humble, but
and you get the profits more too.
Yeah, there's more of a direct. There's more of a direct path to an audience with books, I think, than there is with film, and I do like that. So yeah, you're right. It's both. It's both cool. The disillusionment and the control. But I what I really miss about film, what I loved about film, is that collaboration. Is that spirit of when you're on set with a bunch of your closest friends and everything's going right. You're in a scene and it's just chugging along. You're getting awesome shots, great performances. Yeah, those moments are just gold, and those are some of my best memories. And I miss that. I really miss that because you don't get that with writing.
It is pretty special. Yeah, like, I don't know. When I was mentioning about like performing filmmaking as opposed to thinking about it, and there's something that happens when you're on set, it's like this was the difference between me and my wife in a way, because when we worked on a feature, my wife got disillusioned with filmmaking pretty quick. I mean, not pretty quick, like, but it was by the end of the feature, she was like, this is too much stress. And because we had been basically working 6 months in post, like 24/7 to get this feature out, and it was basically her editing the whole thing. And then at a certain point, we were supposed to get these things to visual effects, and that was a whole bottleneck. So so experiencing all that didn't excite her for the future in film, and for me, it was the opposite. I had all these challenges and difficulties and thankless moments, and there's a million of those in film. Where you're wearing all the different hats and you're doing all the things you're not even supposed to be doing, but you're doing it. You're taking one for the team.
And you feel like you get this feeling like you're like a workhorse, like an ox or something, and you just have this thing strapped to your back, and you're just one step at a time through the mud and the snow, and that's how I felt.
Isn't it great?
Oh yeah. That is not acknowledged enough. Like you see these action shots on set of filmmakers, and they're always right next to the camera and they're pointing into the distance.
Oh yeah, so commanding.
And that's bullshit. Like you're an ox. Directors are oxen, and they're pulling the cart along. Like that's really the more apt analogy.
And it's also not always very commanding. It's typically not commanding where you're like commanding of this whole team.
Right.
You are one of the grunts.
Yeah.
typically.
Yeah.
You know, making.
If you're a good leader, that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and the smaller sets you work on, the more it's true too, because you have to do all these things. And the people who aren't that way, they don't have the attitude of being a grunt, they get identified pretty quickly.
Right.
Like, oh, this guy.
And you know, I hate to say it, but I think that was part of it too. Was when I was younger and when I was making these movies, I think I was arrogant. I think I was, you know, these films taught me humility, and I think I approached.
It's good for you.
Yeah, it is. It is, and you know, I don't think I approached the people who were working on the movies as collaborators. I think I approached them as workers, and that's not a healthy way to run a set.
Yeah. I think that's also the difference between academic filmmaking and artsy filmmaking. Like when you're an artist, like you are to me, and a lot of people look at artists in an opposite way that I do, but to me it's like you're in the muck and you're the mud of it as an artist. And I think a lot of people would probably think that's ridiculous that I just said that, but it's like, maybe it's a class thing, but to me, I've never seen artists as upper class. And, but I generally don't think about class. You know, as an American, I don't think of it that way. But I certainly don't think of artists as academics. And to me, academics, I do think of as kind of high-minded. And they're not people who, you know, in one department of the college would hang out with the people, the jocks or whatever from the other. You know, it's like an extension of high school in some ways, in that way. But
if we dive deep into the story of the making of 15 Minutes of Faye, you are going to get some strong opinions out of me on this very topic, nice. Academics in film and how they relate.
Yeah, like film theory. And my bro Tim Mannix, my co-host, he's big into film theory.
Cool.
And so it's not like I think it's necessarily bad, but I think when you're working on set, it kind of like separates the men from the boys.
Right.
You know, like, are you willing to put this behind you? Your opinions about this scene, are you willing to put it behind you to just make the scene work, make it happen? And so you kind of start putting aside a lot of kind of like preconceived notions about what film is supposed to be about, and how the artist is supposed to be on top of everything, and the auteur, you know. And I think of it more as the academic, just because it's a different way of thinking, I think. And for me, like, I grew up a little bit as an artist, so I guess that's why I relate to them more. But but I'd like to hear what experience is kind of like in that situation. And believe me, if you're like, actually it's academics who are awesome and artists,
oh no,
like, I
agree with you.
I totally will, concede that, like, because it kind of depends on what side of the aisle you're on. Like the other side is crappy or whatever. But no, I want to hear like other particular stories or whatever.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing is, and I can tell the story of Faye better than I can tell Sanctuary. Because I kind of wish I'd asked Reed to come on your podcast now too, because he could tell the story of Sanctuary better than I can, because it's his movie, awesome. And since Faye is my movie, I just feel closer to it, to the memories of that. So. It was my thesis film in grad school, believe it or not. I came into grad school, so like I loved undergrad filmmaking. It was just a blast going out every couple weekends and making something with your friends. That was so much fun.
That's great. That's the way to do it.
Yeah. And then grad school, I don't know why, but I expected it to be the same. I expected it to just be more of the same, but just at a higher, bigger, better level. Right. And that was very naive, because when you hit grad school, there's a film degree. A film master's degree is worthless. So there are very few people who actually want to do that. And so because there are few people, the professors have more time to just sit with each student. By which I mean they have more time to lord over each student.
Yeah.
That is kind of what happened with a lot of us. We all kind of went in bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I don't want to say too many bad things about the UCF graduate program because it's, you know, more than half of the same people don't even work there anymore. It's a totally different program now.
They'll probably never listen to this anyway.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So, and I certainly had a few just awesome professors who really helped me learn. And I wish I could go back and focus on learning myself, because I was focused on, I'm going to make my movie. I'm going to make my big awesome movie.
Right.
And I really should have been more humble about it and thought and approached it as a learning experience, because that's what they were trying to make it for me. And I wish I'd been more receptive to that.
Well, or you could have just learned a bunch of BS.
Or that, yeah.
And it could have ruined your vision.
Maybe. There were a few, I mean, there were some really great professors there, but there were also some really not great professors there. And so...
There's a reason I didn't graduate college. And it was generally my professors.
Yeah, so what happened was I went into grad school with this science fiction movie that I wanted to make. I have since written a book about it, of course, because I never made the movie. It's called Dead Links.
Awesome.
You can find it on my website. But they told me in so many words, you can't make this here because we don't do science fiction here, because we're an art school and science fiction is not art. In so many words. That's essentially what...
That's so laughable.
Yeah, I know. But that's
I hope they're listening now.
Oh, God. And they're...
Which particular professor are we talking about?
Yeah, certainly the professors there are not a monolith. They all disagree with each other, but
That's so
sort of the
great.
professors who had the most say over what I could do had sort of that perspective, and I
That's awesome.
so
Did they have any reasoning for this, by the way? Like, was there any? Did they
it's
back
just
it
their
up with
personal taste. So the whole thing about UCF is that they're really into the micro budget scene, and they want you to make micro budget feature films. They want
Art house.
you know, and two friends to go out on the streets and just make a movie and come back, and you spent no money and you spent 2 weeks making it, and you come back, and so that's what they want you to do.
Now you have real art.
Right, and
Yes.
and that's real art. So,
Tim
and
talks about this too, by the way. I wonder if he got a little bit of this from that, but he talks about how we need a new American French New Wave kind of
interesting.
movement. And you know, I guess the closest thing they have now is mumblecore.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That I very much approach 15 Minutes of Fae from a mumblecore
It's a
aesthetic.
great perspective, yeah.
It's there's that aesthetic of going out with your friends on the streets for 2 weeks and just shooting something. I kind of love that idea.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that approach. It's just that they really kind of forced it on students, and it was really like, you're not allowed to try anything else but this sort of narrow type of film. And you know, I don't think they're like that anymore. This was back then. So they told me at the end of my first semester, they told me I couldn't make the movie I wanted to make. So I thought over break, okay, what else do I want to make a movie about? I've got to come up with something. And so 15 Minutes of Fae was born. No, I loved 15 Minutes of Fae for a while, but the genesis of 15 Minutes of Fae was the end of winter break, and I okay, so this is about to get dark.
Okay.
You ready for this?
Go for it.
So
Punch me.
I had this deadline coming up where I was supposed to give them the movie, and I got a call on I think it was Super Bowl Sunday 2010. My best friend from high school, who I'd remained close with throughout college, very best friend, one of my best friends in the whole world, died in a motorcycle accident.
Oh my goodness.
And I had to, and this was just a few days before my deadline to have a script in, and I hadn't typed a word.
What?
And so I was like, wow, this is not a good situation. So I went to the funeral, and you know, I asked the dean, you know, could you extend my deadline for this? He said no.
Oh,
I explained the situation. He said, no.
That does suck.
Yeah. So
At least give me 2 days.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I, after the funeral, I just went home and just glued myself to a computer screen for 2 days. I wrote the first draft of 15 Minutes of Faye in 2 days. It was terrible. It was a really bad script.
Wow.
Um,
Well, in a sense, like a true artist, right? You use the passion that's kind of put in front of you as a stumbling block,
right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The stumbling block that you don't realize you can get passion from, right? It's right there in front of you. It's annoying. It's someone to spite you, or something, and you can either use that to hate them, or you can use it to find passion inside of you, like let something come out of you. That's good.
I think art is such a healthy outlet for all of the shit we encounter in our lives,
Yeah.
and all of the awful stuff in the world. You know,
we need more of it.
Right. It's better to, you know, instead of internalizing it, instead of lashing out, you know, create art that will deal with those feelings, that
Right.
will address the problem that you're seeing.
Yeah.
I think that's such a healthy thing.
Well, and you know, it's easy for us to say create art, but it's like, I think what that really means is find a way through your pathos, find a way
Totally.
through the obstacles you see in life,
Mm-hmm.
through personal, relatable thoughts that like are based in like love for fellow mankind.
Right.
So, so you're like creating little pathways, mental pathways to deal with life's common problems or uncommon problems, but they are things that help you often as an artist,
Yeah.
help you to deal with the nonsense you have around you. And the hope is that it helps somebody else, but that's not really the focus. The focus is, does it help you deal with this? And then by doing that, that passion comes out of you. That's kind of like you get in a backyard brawl with somebody and you're not like interested in fighting anybody, and they smack you. And as soon as they smack you, it's like, oh, passion can come out of you from that. And it either helps you to fight harder or it helps you to find another way around this battle, or get smart in some way. And so, you know, either you rise to that challenge, or you kind of like protest and crumble under that challenge. And so it's good that you rose to that challenge, man.
I
That's pretty
tried.
cool.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, it was not pleasant, and this dean is going to come back later in the story. He was just an awful person.
Yeah.
And I feel comfortable saying that because all the other professors there thought he was an awful person too. This story gets crazy. This
Yeah.
story gets crazy. So
Some of them, it's like just to spite you. They're just like, no, I'm not going to be your friend.
yeah,
You know, it's like, I'm not wanting you to be my friend. I'm just wanting you to be a reasonable human being. You know?
and actually when I met with the dean and finally submitted my script, the first words he said to me were, "Well, you're never going to be Stanley Kubrick."
Oh my
Can
goodness.
you believe that? It's
What? I just want to curse right now, but like,
And that, you know, and that's why I put the line in the film, Micah's line, there's no point in doing something unless you're better at it than everyone else. That came from that conversation. Where
goodness,
it's like,
that's so great.
really? That's what you're going to
Unless
say
you're
to a
better at
student who's just learning their craft for the first time and they're still in love with it? And
Yes.
maybe their work is imperfect. The thing that you're going to say to them is, well, you're never going to be Stanley Kubrick.
Well.
Like, okay. So, yeah.
well, you're never going to be a good teacher.
Oh, God. That was just a microcosm of
There
that.
went your chance, buddy.
Yeah. That was a
Boy.
microcosm of my whole grad school experience, was
Wow.
that conversation.
But you can't, you teach, right?
Oh,
That's what
God.
some people say.
No, I emphasize
know,
I had
which
some
is being-
great professors who I loved there.
Yeah, no, and I don't mean to be cruel, but it's like, oh my goodness gracious, that just came out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Really? Like unless you're making Stanley Kubrick come out of this college, what's the point? Like
Right.
when you think about it in that way, it's like he's doing a pointless job
Ugh.
that he's always going to fail at because he's not creating Stanley Kubricks. Because you can't. There's only one
Oh,
Stanley
God.
Kubrick.
Oh, God.
Okay, you're supposed to be original people, original thought. You know, people with your own thoughts and your own feelings, your own artistic ideas. Like you can never have two Stanley Kubricks. That's the idea. So, this is one of the reasons I never went to film school. And I for a few years I thought about it is either I'm taking the hopes and dreams of somebody else for me and trying to apply them, or I'm taking my own hopes and dreams and applying them. And the more like you rely on, there are great teachers. My mom is a teacher, which is probably part of the reason I know there's great teachers out there.
And I think there are film schools that do that let you develop your own voice and try to strengthen you instead of try to make you conform to sort of the professor's view of what a film should be. I think there are film schools like that. And I think, depending on the professors you get in your thesis committee, you even at a bad film school, you could find the right people. I just didn't find the right people, unfortunately. So.
But then you went to grad school. What were you thinking? You said your first 4 years was good.
Yeah, it was really good. Grad school was miserable, but the undergrad was really great. So my thesis chair quit his job at the school and left for another school, and then I just didn't know enough other professors at the time to feel comfortable asking them, and I think the dean offered, and I was like, oh, this is kind of scary. Do I, this guy is like borderline verbally and psychologically abusive to students. Do I really want to get into this? But I did, and so I dealt with that and all that entailed for a few years. Basically. So it's scary when you're in school and you're paying all this money for a degree, and you're like, this degree might be my future. I don't know what I was thinking, because a film master's is kind of worthless, but it's scary to have someone hold that much power over you, like whether you pass or fail. Based on based on whether you're making work that one person's subjective artistic viewpoints, even whether he likes it, so that was very challenging to deal with, but that's beside the point. That'll come back later. We'll get back to this guy later. When we actually started making the movie, Addison, the producer, I relied on him so much. He was my rock and my anchor through this whole thing. We went down to location scout together. It was shot right here in Bradenton, Florida, and Sarasota. We did some location scouting. Pre-production was fine, because we'd learned some lessons from Sanctuary about, okay, these are some of the things that can go wrong on a movie set. We were about to learn more lessons, but we tried applying the ones that we'd already learned to Faye. So
this is like the next year, maybe.
Yeah, it was almost exactly 1 year later.
That's great, yeah.
And so we I wanted to use that mumblecore aesthetic, that sort of before sunrise. I wanted to make before sunrise, but where they hated each other. Instead of falling in love, they fall deeper into hate, and it just snowballs into this sort of comedy of manners kind of thing as it goes on, and
that totally makes sense.
And it's just like this satire of fame seeking. And
Parsley did a good job at that.
I really like him.
He's just the sweetest guy. So
he is.
Kind of being a douchebaggery is just kind of like fun.
A different actor. There were actors who did good auditions for that role, but they didn't play the comedy. Like, you didn't feel like you could over
the top.
They just felt like total irredeemable assholes, and I wanted him to play the redeemable asshole.
You gotta string him along.
Jamie was great. I love the cast of that movie. They were all great. Also shout out to Blake Logan from Sanctuary, who plays Brandon, the bad guy. He was amazing. I forgot to mention him earlier.
I forgot about that.
He's so good in that movie. Yeah,
he was the best friend, right? Or the guy's friend?
Yeah, who's also, the villain of the movie.
Right.
But he was so good. He does. I think he does theater now. He does theater stuff.
I saw them both. And I didn't make that connection. I did remember seeing the actress from 15 Minutes of Faye, from Faye.
Yeah, she was in there at the end.
Yeah.
She came in 2014 when we shot that new ending.
She reminded me immediately of that actress who was in what is that sci-fi show people love to talk about? That old show with the brown coats and
Firefly.
She reminds me of the lady who was like the space prostitute lady.
Oh yeah.
She was great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love Firefly. Firefly's such a good
Firefly's
show.
Awesome. Yeah.
And Cameron is amazing. She's amazing to work with. She's an amazing actor.
Yeah.
And Joe too. Hansford. They're all so good.
Good
I wish I
people.
could work with them all again.
Yeah. But now you're doing books.
Yeah.
Is this your career? Is this, like kind of a side career? What is
I
it?
treat it as a hobby. I think that's healthier than to treat it as, this is the one and only thing I can ever do with
Right.
my life. And
Right.
and like I question sometimes, like, there's so many problems in the world. There are like just millions of people dying of infectious diseases in
Right now.
Africa, and it's like, wow, when there are problems like that exist, like, who are we as artists to say, well, I'm going to dedicate my time to this little project that I have? Like,
Right.
it takes so much. You just have to be really sure and really confident that you're doing something worthwhile, and I don't think most artists do that, unfortunately. So I try to keep that. I try to keep that perspective that, like, okay, if I'm going to spend my time on this instead of solving a real problem, like, I need to make it matter. I need to
Right.
make work that matters.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's kind of my perspective now.
like
It's just
that.
treat it as a hobby. Like, I do a lot of other things, and I'm trying to have a more well-rounded life than I did when I was just film, and my whole, I lived and breathed film. Because I think that when you have a more well-rounded life, it also makes your art better. You get better at seeing other perspectives and incorporating those into what you write. So yeah. How the shoot
Absolutely.
went? The shoot was crazy.
Well, you were talking about it being mumblecore-like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had a rehearsal week for 50 Minutes of Fame where we had the cast all come down a week early before any of the crew did, and we rehearsed a bunch of the scenes, and we even watched Before Sunrise and Before Sunset and a couple other related movies, just say, okay, this is kind of the vibe we're going for.
Yeah.
And a lot of the cast had never seen them before, and they totally dug it, and I was like, yes, these are some of my favorite movies.
It's kind of a concept, isn't it, that people need to get. They've never seen a lot of mumblecore.
Right.
Or this kind of free-form filmmaking.
Yeah, that it doesn't really have a story. You're just kind of
Right.
following people who have interesting conversations, and then the movie ends.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, I guess the idea is you have to be able to have interesting conversations with
Yes,
each other.
it is key.
There has to be some chemistry there between people,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. I love mumblecore stuff. It's fun.
Yeah, I love it too. 15 Minutes of Fame wasn't really truly mumblecore because we had a big crew. I mean, not as big as Sanctuary, but it was probably 15 people working on the crew for that. I mean, big for a student film
For sure.
for a month.
Right.
15
That's
people working. We got found places for them to stay around Bradenton.
For all 15? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
we
good
got
job.
a deal at these like vacation rental places. They let us stay there for a month.
You can get a deal sometimes.
And then they kicked us out right near the end, and then we had to scramble to find new places because there were a couple people on the crew who were being rowdy and rambunctious, I guess. So, but the shoot was grueling. I mean, we did 6-day weeks, 12-hour days, shooting almost all of the movie at night. We would wake up at sunset and go to sleep just after sunrise.
Nice.
We rented out an apartment complex, Micah's apartment. They let us just rent that for a month, and a few people even stayed there.
Yeah.
So our production designers just created all that from scratch. Nobody actually lived at that apartment.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And Sarah Cole is actually a professional production designer now out in LA, who did 15 Minutes of Fame. It was her first movie that she production designed, and she loved it. And then she she got into freaking AFI in California.
Wow.
Yeah, and now she's a real production designer.
That is
So
a
I'm like,
real great profession, I think.
It's
I mean,
cool. Yeah.
In fact, it's one of the only ones I would do besides being a director and writer.
Cool.
I really, really value production because I have this like I'm very detail oriented.
Right. You got to put so much creativity
Yeah.
and so much precision into that.
And you have to kind of put thought into like lived in spaces.
Yeah.
And like it's almost like you're the actor, kind of like blocking and stuff. Mm-hmm. You're doing that as a production artist before one, one shot's been shot. It's like you're kind of living in that space and making sense of it. Like how would this work in real life? And I think that's a real talent to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Gosh, now that I'm thinking of production design for 15 Minutes of Faye, I'm just recalling off the top of my head right now, and I haven't thought about this for years. Sarah and I had a whole color scheme mapped out for the movie where different colors would represent different things, and we followed it all through the shoot.
Nice.
Green represents sort of envy and jealousy, but also growth, and so that's
Nice,
like mica. It's associated with mica,
Right.
and then
That makes a lot of
purple
sense.
is reserved for Faye. It's like
yeah.
the color of royalty. Our modern celebrities are our royalty. And then,
Right.
gosh, what else was it?
Yeah, and your marketing was purple.
Yeah. I remember earth tones were Hansford and Kevin. They were represented in earth tones. And it's
Cool.
not just in their clothes either. It's just
Right.
like items in their living spaces and props that they use. If you go through the movie, you can kind of detect that certain colors mean certain things.
That's so great. Is that going to be released again?
No, I don't think
Oh,
so.
are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. It's such a great film.
Oh, thank you. I'm ready to move on, though.
But maybe the fans are not.
I don't think it has any fans.
I'm
I
a
mean,
fan.
I think that,
wanna see it.
we played it in the Tampa Bay Underground Film Festival, which I'm very grateful to that we got into that. We won, we shared the prize for the Audience Choice Award at that festival. That was pretty cool.
Why don't you just dump it on YouTube?
I don't know.
I know the word dump sounds so terrible.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we let everyone download it. We gave copies to the cast and crew via digital download.
Can I get one?
Oh, sure.
I really like it. I want to see it again.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's just personally, I'm ready to move on. I don't necessarily like. I
can relate. Yeah.
I really want to be identified with my books now, which are all sci-fi fantasy stuff.
Awesome.
So just having 15 Minutes of Faye and my name attached to it floating out there is kind of like off-brand for me now, even though there is a part of me that will always love 15 Minutes of Faye. There's a part of me that will always hate 15 Minutes of Faye. I have a very love-hate relationship with this
That's
movie
good,
I made.
though. That's how you know passion's there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like relationships, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was such a difficult, really, Sanctuary, the problems were in production. Faye, the problems hit, well, there is one big problem during production, which I'll get to, but the real problems in Faye hit in post-production. There is a reason it took so many years to make.
Yeah.
We, like the shoot, I think it proceeded okay for the first couple weeks. We had learned lessons on Sanctuary about working with people and keeping people a little happier, at least,
Yeah.
on set. And
Can be pretty important, huh?
yeah, and I think people could tell that I cared about the movie, and I
Yeah.
think that
Makes a
is unfortunately uncommon. I think that's one thing, despite all my shortcomings at the time, that I did right. Like I really showed people that this movie mattered to me, whereas
That's great.
yeah.
And that, in a way, that's why I wish I could convince you to come back to filmmaking.
No.
Really,
Thanks.
because there's not a lot of people where you sense that passion for the story, and they really care about the story enough to where they're going to go through a battle
Right.
to make the story happen.
Right. Yeah. It's too bad. Yeah.
It means a lot.
Yeah.
And if you find
So-
that crew that you work well with,
Yeah.
then you won't have to be kind of slashing and burning every time you produce something and going through friends, like,
Totally.
you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, like, I'd be okay if you came back.
No, well, thank you. Oh gosh, I don't
No,
know.
it's good stuff, man.
It's yeah. I'm trying to remember other stories from the set.
That's cool.
The really big night of all filming was, of course, the concert scene. That's like the biggest set piece. Well, I guess the mansion was a pretty big set piece. That was just insane. We didn't have a location when going into production. We did not know where we're gonna shoot that scene.
Nice.
And Mike Schatz, he was our craft services guy. He went to film school with us, and he kindly agreed to do craft service for the whole movie.
Yeah.
Now he's a professional film colorist out in LA, who's far more successful than I am. He knew a guy with a mansion. He's just like, yeah, I know a guy with a mansion. I'll ask him, and he asked him, and we shot at this $11 million house.
Wow, that's immense.
And I think the
so
owners
great.
sold it shortly after the film was shot there, and it sat vacant for like 10 years because nobody else wants to
my
buy an
goodness.
$11 million
That's
house.
funny.
So that was cool
Poor
that we
guy.
got that. And just lots of local businesses. I think that's one huge advantage of shooting in a place that is not used to a lot of film. Is that local businesses are just really interested in having you come there and get them the press for, hey, yeah, a movie was shot here.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you try that in LA, nobody wants you. Like, oh, get out of here, film
Yeah,
people.
They're used to this more.
Yeah.
They're used to saying no.
Yeah,
when you come back.
yeah, you can film here. That'll be $5,000.
Yeah. An easy $5,000. Yeah.
Yeah. So the concert scene was shot at the Cock and Bull Pub in Sarasota. Shout out to the Cock and Bull Pub. Don and Howie, the owners, are incredible. They were incredibly patient with us through the whole movie.
That's awesome.
They let us actually come back and do reshoots. We did reshoots for Faye 2, not as extensive as Sanctuary, but we did some reshoots there.
That's awesome. Of them.
We had been talking with them for a few months about filming there, and so we set it up to take place at an actual concert. So the concert that you see in the film is a live concert, and all those extras there were coming for the concert. And I wish I'd been more communicative with the extras. I wish I'd gotten on a loudspeaker and said, hey, we're filming a movie, so don't look at the camera. But as it was, I wasn't experienced enough to know that I needed some degree of communication with them. So
I think I do remember somebody kind of glancing over.
So instead, we just tried to guerrilla shoot it, because that's what we were used to at the time. We were just like, hey, let's go in and sneak it, So we'll sneak through all these people in the movie.
That makes sense.
We had them sign, release forms on the way in and the way out, but.
And the musicians knew that there was stuff was going to be used.
Yeah, a couple of the people in the band Asphodel from the film are members of a real band, Lion Choir. It doesn't exist anymore. They broke up years ago, but and it's actually so it's actually them from the band as like the drummer and the bass player, I think, in the background. We talked with them too, and they agreed to let us use their equipment and stuff. And we scheduled it so that the guy who plays Lee, Faye's boyfriend, would he's not in many scenes, so we were going to have him shoot just a few nights before and then that night. And originally he was going to be in a few other scenes, but the guy who came to set, he did such a great audition. He was so good. He
a natural.
Yeah, he was a natural, and he'd been in real movies before, and we had all these actors coming through our auditions, and everyone was local actors except him. When we saw on his Naive Us, we saw on his resume that there was a bunch of stuff from Los Angeles, and we're like, ooh, this guy's from Los Angeles. He's a real actor, So we got to hire this guy. So we did, and that was the single biggest mistake we made on the entire film.
Was it
single biggest
was he
mistake?
A diva or something?
We noticed that he was just a little odd on set. Just his behavior, it's hard to describe. Something was just off about him. He didn't relate to other people in a normal way. There was something there that we couldn't quite figure out what it was.
Probably because he was from LA. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So he, I guess he.
So what did he do? Like, did he?
I guess he was a method actor or something.
Yeah.
So he's playing this like enraged coked out rock star.
Right.
And so to get into character, what does he do?
Oh my goodness, are you serious?
He snorts a whole bunch of cocaine right before the biggest scene of the movie.
What was I just saying about LA?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, cliche. Should not have hired the LA guy.
Yep.
So he comes out and
Don't do drugs, kids.
Yeah, don't do drugs. We very quickly notice his behavior is off. He's just bouncing off the walls and you know, he wants to just do take after take after take and he wants to keep talking and keep doing, and he's just very active, hyperactive, and he can't be controlled, and he just goes. And I'm trying to slow him down.
Yeah.
Say, hey, just wait here while we prepare the next shot. And then remember your cues. You have to be here, and then you have to be here 2 seconds later, and then 3 seconds after that, you have to be here doing this other thing. And he couldn't process any of that. He was just, I just gotta go, and you know.
This is not even the way you're supposed to do method acting.
Yeah.
Like obviously he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, I know.
You know, he heard from somebody else. Oh, this is the way you know. That's
Yeah,
not
exactly.
What it means, bro. Like, there's limitations to your in-home performance. What you're doing. You know.
So
I don't know what it's called, but basically you have like when you're on set, you're off set, but you're in method acting, and it's like you are channeling this person continually, and it can be really. I guess the idea is like it can really sap you emotionally.
Right.
So you have to get past that part where it's sapping you, and like at that point, some people believe it's like you become the character.
Right.
When you get past that point, and you still are wearing this coat, you know, like loosely on you.
Mm-hmm.
But like, just because you do cocaine as a character does not mean you should do cocaine in real life. Yeah. That means you're not going to be there. And
Right.
your faculties are not going to be there as well. So yeah, that's not.
Yeah. So in one take, we were just horrified because the band had let us use their equipment. He took their like $200-some guitar. And like, you know, he's seen in a bunch of like, I don't know, Jimi Hendrix videos or something, he takes the guitar.
Are you serious?
Yeah, in one
word.
shot, and he just goes BAM! And slams it against the stage. And we, you know, the whole crew, we're just staring. Our mouths are wide open.
That's
we're just
so
like,
great.
what just happened? And the band members are just staring. They're like,
what the hell did you do to my guitar?
This was not part of what we bargained for. So
insurance paid for some things, maybe.
I offered to pay for the guitar. They're like, no, don't worry about it. He's just a crazy guy. They were really.
They were probably smart enough to give their like worst equipment.
Maybe.
yeah.
I don't know. I felt so bad and so guilty. But we got him off set pretty quick. As soon as we realized this was not going to work out, you know, I just took Addison aside and said, okay, Addison, can you deal with this? I actually, Reed was there. Reed was the photographer for 15 Minutes of Faye.
Oh, yeah.
And
Cool.
and so I said, I took Reed aside and said, Reed, here are the shots I want you to get over the next half hour. You're the director for half hour. Go get shots. And he did. And he directed half an hour for half an hour of that night.
Yeah.
And then I was dealing with this guy with Addison, and we made up a quick plan. I mean, we got him off set. Addison booked a flight for him the next morning to go back to the netherworld of LA, and
Nice.
but he still had more scenes to shoot. So we were like, what do we do? So I went home and stayed up super late into the day and rewrote parts of the scripts and gave all of his lines to Catherine, who plays Misty, the manager.
Oh yeah.
So that was fun.
That worked out.
It was a fun experience. Not. And then we did a little bit of day shoots at the end, I mean, that was that. The rest of the production, I don't think there's too many stories to tell about it.
How do you think the story plays now, after making it? Like, do you think you've communicated the story that you wanted to tell through the film?
Somewhat. I mean, I don't know. I see a lot of flaws in it, of course. I think, everyone told me when I was making the film, and I was young and stupid, and no, I'm right, you're wrong. Everyone said, this guy Micah, like, he's super unlikable, And I still do believe very strongly we should be able to tell stories about unlikable people. Some of the best films and TV series ever have been about unlikable people.
Yeah.
But you've got to handle those kinds of stories more tactfully than I think I did with 15 Minutes of Faye. You gotta give people something to latch onto, some intrigue or some humor. And I mean, I have some of that, but not nearly enough. And so, when I show the movie to people, about half of them get it, and they say, okay, this is a satire. Like, we're supposed to be looking at these people from a distance and laughing at their expense. And then the other half of the people just hate it. They're like, why are we watching this movie about these awful people?
I don't know. To me, it's like, it's more of like a black comedy.
Yeah.
In the sense that it's like, one thing I love about comedy is that there's really, generally, especially this kind of comedy, there's really relatable stuff. And these are people I've known. Like, I feel like some of these people I've known, like, mostly this was in college, but like, there's that age where you're just kind of unaware of how you come off to other people.
Right.
And you're not necessarily socially acceptable with how you do things.
Right.
And obviously it's like there's the whole thing of somebody leaves home and they become famous and they come back home. Like, how do you relate to them? And that's if you've never done it before, it's like, it's hard to know what to do at first. Especially if you actually are a fan of them. And so you have this kind of like, should I act like they're not all that and like pick up where we left off, or should I be like worshipful of them, or like, how should I relate to them? And so when you're that age, it's like you do see this kind of behavior, this kind of weird, kind of suck up attitude.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, people see through that. Like, they know that this is a common thing that can happen.
Right.
And as you act like this, the more you act like this, the more it's like you're going to get a big no.
Right.
Because you're not trustworthy. So, but yeah, I mean, so it felt in a way less satirish for me, or less mockery to it, and more of like, no, like, this is somebody I've known. And,
cool.
And I really feel for them.
Cool.
Like,
I did try to get that vibe into it, especially in the second half of the movie. So I'm glad. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah. I mean, because in a way, like, I'm not famous and all this stuff, so it's like, and so in a way, I related to Faye less than him, or you could say I related to his some of his friends, more, like the people who are dealing with his nonsense.
Right.
So I guess I related to them more, but I also kind of feel for people who are like that, who kind of want to get some kind of into high society, and so they feel like if they suck up to people, they can do that, but that after you become like 20 something, it's like you start to kind of see through that nonsense. So
yeah, well, some of us do. Some of us.
Yeah.
I mean, I made the movie in the first place because I was in film school, and I saw maybe people not exactly like Micah, but people who thought that this was the thing that defined their worth as a human being, was if they could become successful. And that's not unique to the arts, of course, but I saw it a lot in the arts, so I decided to make it, just move one art over from film and make it about music instead. And
it's like a newbie mistake in the arts. Like, because you said it's true in the arts, and I totally think it's part of the essential part of what you deal with first when you get into the arts, is like, because you're always taught about the masters, right? Whether it's painting or music or film or whatever it is, you're taught to idolize the masters and do what they do. And so this can lead to in a bad direction, which leads us right to where he was at, which is, these masters are so great, they're like bigger than human beings, and
the only reason you should ever make any art like them is if you can be Stanley Kubrick.
Right. Exactly. So it's like there's a big stumbling block here for people that they can kind of mess up their lives even because they get this wrong idea that unless they become Stanley Kubrick, they shouldn't be in film, or unless they can know somebody like Stanley Kubrick and get into Hollywood society, then it's also worthless, you know. So it's like, but eventually you realize as an artist that it's all about the work.
Totally.
It's not about the social
Totally.
posturing and all this stuff.
Totally. Those are the best people to work with, are the people who love the work. Because there are a lot of people who just love the scene. And I've always found that I work the best with the people who love the work.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because they're more focused. They don't fall into like taking cocaine on set. You know, they don't fall into these nonsensical notions.
Yeah.
They think about like what gives them quality work. Whether you're a cinematographer or actor or director, it's like what leads you to make quality work.
Yeah.
And so they focus on that, and they want to make that their, not necessarily their life goal, but really part of a deep part of their life and who they are, is just trying to get past these common mistakes when you're making the craft and making it happen, you know. And so this becomes like what the arts are. It becomes what filmmaking is, you know. It's about the craft. So, and you can, and then once you get to that point, I feel like you can see a lot of the people who haven't arrived coming behind you, and then it's kind of transparent who's authentic and who's not at that point. So he falls into that range. It's like, no, this dude does not know what the music scene in this case is about.
Right.
You know.
I actually said to one of my professors at one point, like, this is that's the best art, is when it's collaborative, is when, you know, the more you can keep ego out of it, get your ego out of it, get the actor's ego out of it, or at least work with actors who can take their own ego out of it, if you can find them. The less ego there is, the better the art is going to be. And my professor was like, no, that's bullshit. You know, the very best films of all time have been made by, you know, egoists. By, you know, Stanley Kubrick was legendary, full of ego.
No, that's because people tolerated him, because he was also a craftsman.
Right.
He was enough of a craftsman to where you tolerated that.
And I would argue his movies would be even better if he'd collaborated a little.
Absolutely.
But that's just my opinion.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was like a paranoid, often very paranoid, and what's the word when you like are like a germaphobe a little bit? Like he's just like so detail oriented, where sometimes it was crippling. You know, so you know it can be detrimental to your craft. You know, so I think focusing in on the craft is really important. And focusing about like the posturing, like we said,
right,
is really kind of a stumbling block that can not just ruin you, but make you irrelevant. Right. Which is almost worse than making a mistake, you know, or something like that, you know. But yeah, man, I wish you would come back. You've got other stories, and sci-fi and fantasy. I mean, that professor, I don't think has a horse in the game. Okay, we've got technology now. It makes it cheaper to make stuff like sci-fi and fantasy. I mean, fantasy, one thing about fantasy, and it's just something to think about, it's true that certain things you're going to need to spend money on. Like fantasy, it's locations, I think. You've got to have this rocky, old European looking, or you've got to go to like Iceland or some crap, you know, where it's like, you know, you're telling a Viking tale or what have you. And sci-fi, it's similar, but I don't think you need the locations. I mean, it's good to have them. Right. But if you can do something like, and I know this probably sounds like ridiculous, but you know how The Mandalorian does the volume? Have you heard anything about the volume?
No.
The Mandalorian, this is like a lot in the last few years. You've heard of The Mandalorian, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Well, they have this thing where now it's, instead of just the traditional green screen technology with maybe some backdrops and stuff, instead of that kind of thing, it's a 360 degree.
Oh, you know
LED
what? I
screen.
have seen that. Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Cool.
Some people call it the volume. I think other people call it like something like because it's not projection, obviously. They're LED screens, and it's 360 degree, and so what it does is it solves for lighting, it solves for interaction often, and it solves for a lot of post is done.
Cool. Yeah.
So even though, yes, you have to deal with the studio costs, but once you get those scenes out of the way, that takes care of a lot of the post-production issue and any lighting corrections and all these things you might have had to deal with. So this kind of technology is useful, and also there's like stuff like Unity Engine, other software that's getting so good that it's like you could create virtual environments. They have this thing now where it's like you can take a camera out, and yes, this would be a full day of shooting, but it's like your camera in a location, and you're taking pictures of like everything around you, and you're creating basically a map, like a digital map, and then that becomes your location. And then you have your actors act on set, and you don't have to use a volume or anything. You just use a regular set, and then you are separating your actors from your backgrounds, and you insert your actors into that location, the digital location. So it's quite impressive, the stuff that's possible now.
And I think it's going to become even more impressive as we go on into the decade, and you see like these. The news is always talking about these deep fakes that they're worried about. They're going to replace a politician's face and have them say something crazy. But that technology is going to come into entertainment too, and it's going to get. I think it's going to get super cheap to do some really complicated visual effects in maybe 10 years. Maybe 10 years from now I'll come back. Once it gets like really cheap, then I'll be like, okay, I'll make another movie.
I'll try to make a cool sci-fi cheaply and then contact you. See, it's possible. Watch my film.
The post process on Faye though was just so traumatic. It's like still it's fresh in my memory, so it's like let me tell you a little bit about how this went. So we ran into just obstacle after obstacle when we finished shooting the movie. First thing is we ran out of money, so there was no money left for anything in post.
Are you able to talk about how much money we're talking about?
Faye, gosh, the original production budget was I think $25,000 or something like that, and then it went overboard, and in the end, at the end of the day, probably it was $40,000 at the end of the day.
That was about the feature I worked on.
Cool. Yeah. We hired some sound mixers to do a sound mix for the movie. They were like 2/3 of the way through, and then they just quit out of the blue. I'm like, okay, fun. So I spent all this money on a sound mix that's not complete, and so what do I do? And so I was gathering the funds to hire new sound mixers, and then I got sick. Without going into like too much detail about what was wrong with me, I got really, really sick. I suffered a serious health impediment, and
you were in the hospital, were you?
Yeah, I was in the hospital. I wasn't. I was never admitted to the hospital. I did go to the hospital a few times, like the emergency room.
Like a heart thing or stress related?
No. It was debilitating. I had to take a month off work. I had to go back and live with my parents for a while so they could take care of me.
Yeah.
And I had to spend.
Hospital's expensive, man.
Yeah, I had to spend 100% of the money I was making on just medical stuff, because that's America. So I was just shelling out loads and loads, all the money that I wanted to spend on. Faye, I was
give us all your cash.
Yeah, I was spending on medical stuff, and so that went on for a couple years, and I couldn't make any progress with Faye for a couple years.
Wow.
But fortunately, I recovered, and eventually I did get back to Faye, re-edited some scenes.
Was that in the middle of production, by the way, or in the post?
That was in post, yeah.
Okay, well, luckily.
Yeah, and there were... I
was imagining, like, the middle of production. That would sound terrible.
Yeah, that would have been bad. I got a new thesis committee, and I got that other guy off my committee, thankfully. So, and they, they advised me and helped me kind of pull everything together and finish it. And it was
Did
finished.
they remind you that you're not Kubrick again?
No, they didn't, thankfully.
Okay, thankfully. That's so nice of them.
Yeah, yeah. And so it was done. The sound mix was done, and I was like, all right, we're gonna finish this thing now. I made a movie. I'm stoked. I'm so excited. Let me just real quick. I've been a little bit out of touch with some of the actors. I'm gonna Google these actors and see what they're up to.
Oh.
And as I was Googling, I thought, what about that? What about that crazy guy? What about that guy?
What happened to him?
What happened to the guy who did all that cocaine and who we couldn't control on set? Because he was still in the movie in a few scenes. So I Googled him. Very first thing that popped up. Very first search result.
No, just
No. Very first search result that pops up on Google for this guy. The National Sex Offender Registry.
Oh, that makes sense.
So.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is new. And I read a little bit into his story and watched some news videos of him in court for this thing that he did, which was awful. And I was just like, wow, this guy is in.
Strange sensation.
Yeah, I'm like, this guy is in my movie now.
Poor guy.
What do I do about this? Like, is it okay for me to release this movie? Because I didn't like the guy to begin with, and now that this came out, I was like, what do I do? Like this?
Who cares?
No, I was like,
You kicked him out.
I was like, seriously, I'm never going to be able to watch my movie again because I'm going to see this guy, and this thing is going to pop up in my mind. It's going to ruin my own movie for me and for everyone else who watches it too.
It's quite storied, I think. It's quite nice, I think. You did the best you could to find, what you thought was a good actor, and you picked it out when you realized he was not, and you kicked him out. And then it makes sense that he would get into some kind of shenanigans somewhere else.
It does. We talked about it. I emailed back and forth with the professors and a lot of the cast and crew, and there were a lot of different opinions about what was going on. This was all happening right at the height of Me Too, Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey. All of this was in the news, so this was the backdrop for this, and Ridley Scott took Kevin Spacey out of that movie and replaced him with the other actor, and I was like, should we do that? Can we do that?
Well, the reality is it doesn't reflect on your production, and if anything, you might have gotten some publicity out of it.
Maybe.
You never know.
We did decide to replace him, though.
Yes, exactly.
So the actor that you see in the movie is not him, and we found a guy. He lived in Phoenix, Arizona. So we went to Phoenix and shot him against a green screen and hired a visual effects artist to digitally replace his head in a bunch of the shots. And then we actually flew him out to Bradenton. This is so expensive. And we shot some scenes with him.
To get the right people. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did replace him. I still don't know if it was the right call. I don't know. It's all very up in the air. But
well, hopefully your investors are not annoyed that all this work you had to do to get these people, and then you end up getting a cocaine addict or whatever.
So yeah, and then we submitted to film festivals and got into one. I submitted to more than that, but that's okay.
That's not cool. Like, man, I've seen so many sucky films at festivals.
I know.
And then they don't pick these films. I don't understand sometimes how these festivals make sense.
I don't either.
The model of what they're trying to do, So I don't know. And also a lot of local festivals I've seen will get a lot of international films and not focus on local films.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of really bugs me because it's like if your own local festival won't support the local film community,
right.
What does that say? Like who else is going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
So, I have to go to like some place in upstate New York or some place out in Georgia or wherever, and maybe if I'm lucky they'll let me in. It's like, that's not cool. I would like to save money on travel and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just don't understand. But thankfully, festivals like T-Buff are some of the ones that will host local filmmakers and their work. So is that the one you got in?
Yeah, that's the one we got into.
Right.
We were very glad to get into that, and yeah, I think that's the end of the story for 15 Minutes of Faye. Like I said, I kind of want to move on. It it was a learning experience more than anything else. It, you know, it taught me a lot. I think it taught a lot of people who worked on it a lot.
Absolutely.
It was great to meet the people who we had, you know, good relationships with on set.
Yeah.
It was great to meet the cast, some of the crew, and I think the biggest lesson of all that I take with me is just when you're an artist and you want to do a big project, just be careful what you get yourself into. Like, I wish I could go back to my younger self before we made Faye, before we made Sanctuary, and say, like, you know, this is a time for learning. This isn't a time to, you know, wield,
Kubrick,
to become Kubrick.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Like you should focus on learning a craft before you attempt something this major. And just be sure that the thing you select as the big project you want to work on is something that you truly, deeply love and can stay in love with for, you know, the 10 years that it might take to finish the darn thing. So that's so important. And I carry that with me now, and I take that into the books that I write. Any project that I take on now, I'm just like extra careful, because I don't want to get into a situation anymore where I'm dragging this thing that my professors, I mean, ultimately I made the kind of movie that my professors wanted me to make.
Right.
There is part of me that loves 15 Minutes of Faye, and I put my heart and soul into it, but it originated with my professors, and it wasn't really mine. So
their own aesthetic and their own ethic.
Exactly. Yeah. So moving forward, like, and especially if I were ever to get back into film, like, I would want to be very careful about selecting the right project.
What would you feel if somebody came to you about your book and was like, I want to make your book into a film?
Done. I will write the screenplay for you.
Nice.
For free, and it's done. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
Cool. I was imagining you being like, I have to direct it.
No. I'm no longer that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be hard for me if I did that. Of course, I'm still very like into the film world, and you know, as much as I ever was. But yeah, if I had written something like that, I'd be like all over, like, no, I'm going to make this into a film, but I could use your investment dollars. That's nice. You know? Yeah, I mean, in a way, my, you know, goals are centered more around my filmmaking.
Cool.
So I hope that good filmmakers like us keep making films, because we need good films out there, and keep enriching their local film communities. And whether you come back to the fold or not, it's okay. We love you and accept you.
Oh, well, thank you. We'll always have 15 Minutes of Faye.
That's right. In a sanctuary.
Yes, and Sanctuary.
Are there other jokes we can add? And book writing.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
Oh, let me plug.
Speaking of that, yes.
Let me plug my book.
Plug them. Plug away.
So I've got 3 books so far. I'm planning to write more. I've got a series called Thorn. That was the first one I wrote. That's based on Sanctuary. It's
awesome.
the log line for it. It's one of the most evil demons of all time sees the error of his ways and decides to become good and defect.
Wow.
But the angels won't let him defect, so he has to forge his own path toward ethics and becoming a moral being. And Sanctuary is
awesome.
the 3rd book in that series.
Okay, so you have a 3-book series.
It's a 5-book series, and
Whoa.
Sanctuary is the 3rd book. So yeah, it got a little weird there. But
No, that's cool. It almost makes me think of what is the one? But like Guillermo del Toro made it.
Cool.
And it reminds me of that. But my point in bringing that up was, does it have a comics vibe to it, where you could make these characters into comic book characters or superhero-ish characters?
I don't think so. It's more of like a horror fantasy vibe. It's more of a fantasy vibe than anything else. There's this there's this whole like society of demons, and they have their own cultural rules and stuff like that.
It makes me think of the writer Straczynski, who does graphic novel-ish stuff, and he does a lot of this kind of horror, demon, kind of like John Constantine kind of stuff.
Cool.
But the good thing about that is, if you can do that, that's another way to get your stuff seen. And also, film people love that stuff.
Right.
Because comics are so
Right.
big now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an idea
Yeah.
down your alley. It might work. And Austin McKinley, a dude around here, does comics. Austin McKinley is Sarasota guy.
Cool.
Austin Janowski is the guy from Tampa who does comics as well. He just sold an issue of comics, sold out his latest issue. I think it was not called Deliverance, but
Awesome.
Retribution. That's what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a great artist. He works with Marvel sometimes.
Cool.
So there's people around here who could hook you up,
Hmm.
by the way. So if you need a hookup, I can maybe send someone to you.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And if any of your old friends who do filmmaking, if I need a hookup, maybe you could send me their phone numbers or something.
Oh, indeed.
Indeed, sir.
Indeed. It's how
So-
communities form.
Yeah,
Yes.
man. Thank you so much for coming on, man. This is so incredible. And I really love your work.
Thank you.
I do hope you'll do more of it, and I do hope that I can read some of your books.
Thank you. Yes, I'm actually about to release a new one. I've got a time travel book coming out next month. So
a different
look for that.
series or a different story?
It's a standalone book. It's a time travel story about it's a world where they time travel is commonplace, and everyone goes to time ports like airports, and they can just flit to and fro through the past and the future. And
Nice.
and there's
Sounds confusing though.
it gets a little twisty. It gets a little twisty.
Yeah.
I try to keep it clearer than I kept Sanctuary. We'll see how I did. We'll see how people react
That's the
to
beauty
it.
of time
but-
travel is it's very twisty in the brain. You're like,
Yeah.
what's going on?
So there's a terrorist who attacks this time port and takes the director of the security agency hostage, and then her coworkers realize that the terrorist is her as a younger person.
Wow.
So it's
Oh, there you go.
yeah. So that's the start. That's the plot. So and then it
That's
takes
fun.
off from there.
What's
so,
it called?
The Bad Part of Time.
The Bad Part of Time.
Yes.
I love it.
Yep. So that's coming out soon. So yeah.
Well, Josh, thanks so much, man.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, and thanks for coming down here
Yeah, man.
to talk. This was fun. This is a great conversation.
really amazing.
I have not talked about film like this for a long time, so it's really fun to sort of dip my feet back into the film world
Yeah,
and talk
absolutely.
film with somebody. It's really cool. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
All right, till next time, guys.
This has been John Croft and Tim Mannix wishing you happy, trouble-free filmmaking to our film community, and happy networking at Film Bar Mondays. Sanctuary, written and produced by Josh Ingle, can be found on Amazon Prime Video. And 15 Minutes of Faye, directed by Joshua Ingle, is currently unavailable on streaming or for sale. The Film Bar Review is made in association with the local Florida and Georgia-based film networking events called Film Bar Mondays, which takes over bars and breweries on Monday nights to bring filmmakers and actors together across the spectrum of experience to have a drink, discuss the industry and our battle stories. In this case, we're discussing locally made films. We critique them, and we give a voice to the people who work on them. Join us Monday nights in cities like Atlanta, Georgia, Jacksonville, Florida, and Tampa, Florida to have a drink and talk film. Reach out at thefilmbarreview@gmail.com and find Film Bar Mondays at our various group pages on Facebook.